What's up, people? We are back. Chris with a K, Chris Griffin, Horns Down Podcast. Jason, wait a minute, I gotta get my directions right. Jason Watkins, Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with the coach, and Mr. Sooners 360 himself, Chris Mason. We're all here tonight. How you fellas doing?
Good.
Good. Well, you guys didn't know it's springtime, not officially, but pretty much there with the weather we've been getting here in Oklahoma, right? But fellas, I will say it seems to be a lot of optimism, in there. It's really optimistic. A lot of people are really optimistic about this team, even in the first couple of days or whatever. For me, I think that if you have your places that you go to for information and news and stuff, and hopefully we're one of those those sites, those podcasts that you listen to. Definitely got to listen to Eichert and Lehman to get their breakdowns and their perspective, just to give you that idea of some of these players that you're really intrigued by, you're really interested in. But I'll open the floor. Chris Mason, Jason, what have you guys heard as far as the spring practices and just the overall vibe there at OU?
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I think, being the recruiting guy, the number one name I've heard from so far from a number of different sources, but obviously Teddy Lehman was talking about him, and he's getting mentioned a lot of places, is apparently David Stone looks like he might be the most improved player on campus. And if David Stone carries that into the fall, that is a significant movement of the talent base on our defense, on our roster. If David Stone is better than Grayson Holton, better than Jaden Jackson, and is potentially our number one defensive tackle, that kind of transforms this defense. Because the early buzz on the defensive ends is really strong. Marvin Jones Jr. is getting a lot of hype. R. Mason Thomas looks better. Even the stuff I'm seeing from PJ and clips and from some discussion points is everyone seems to think he's got some momentum moving forward if he can just stay healthy. So to me, the thought of a dare I say an elite OU front four in SEC play, if David Stone is the most improved player on the OU roster, I have a hard time seeing how OU, along with freshman All-American Jaden Jackson, R. Mason Thomas, Danny Okoye is getting a lot of buzz. It just sounds like our front four could be as good and as deep and as talented as it's been since maybe the days of Gerald McCoy, Adrian Taylor, Austin English, and those guys in 2000, 2008. So
at least that far. Yeah.
So, back and then, the best D-line before that was probably, was the Charles Walker, the guy from Maryland whose name I'm forgetting right now, into the Cowboys. 2015 was the last defense. That D-line that D-line played really well with Eric Stryker and those guys. But we're talking about, if David Stone and Jaden Jackson are hitting it as sophomores, that's 2 early day draft picks.
Yep.
R. Mason Thomas, I think we all think at 249, looking kind of yoked up, is at 6'3", 249 with his game. That's a borderline first round pick, and everyone's saying that Miguel Chavis has kind of lit a fire under Marvin Jones Jr. All the comments about him sort of loafing or low effort seem to have just disappeared, at least in spring optimism. So, then the linebacker group, when you see the photos of those guys, they look beastly. And the safety group as well.
Skills in that room. Yeah.
Safety, I think cornerback, we got some young kids, and, we're a healthy Gentry Williams shoulder away from having a pair of SEC. I just think right now, if you want my spring optimism, Yeah, I think Ian Gomes is exactly healthy. Gentry comes back healthy. Watch out. I think my spring optimism is based upon the thought of David Stone being our most improved player, and he probably has like the highest ceiling on the maybe on the whole defense, other than Danny Okoye. Just hearing all those comments, Teddy Lehman was pretty blunt about it. He thought our front seven on the hoof looked damn good and looks different, guys. Kendall Daniels and Marvin Jones Jr. I think we on our podcast, we gave them enough flowers for those acquisitions. We talked those guys up, but I don't think nationally they made much of a dent. And you could be adding two elite athlete playmakers to a front seven that, is already pretty loaded. So I'm having a hard time not having a lot of optimism about that.
It seemed like it seems like we motioned and I want to say Lehman at second that motion as far as Kendall Daniels. I mean, when you think about that kid, this is what I say. I think that I kind of, obviously I'm a tend to believe that, the son McCullough probably has the higher upside. But when you look at Kendall Daniels, obviously I think everybody knows that kid should have been in an OU uniform from the get-go. Recruiting was all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Regardless, though, you sit there and look at that kid and say, hey, look, he's basically a 4-year starter. He's played safety and done well and made plays. He's also played linebacker as well. Some people talked about effort. Some people talk about bad angles, different things like that. He has time to clean that up. But in this system here, it benefits him and it benefits us greatly as OU fans simply because now go back to the Cincinnati game when we played at Cincinnati and to a couple of games last year. Deshaun McCullough, as great as he was, wheel routes, different things, they would pick on him simply because they would catch him flat-footed. So, I mean, it's one of those things where with Kendall Daniels, I don't think that necessarily is going to happen this year. So I think that you can play as big and be as versatile as you want. I was telling a friend today at work, to me, I don't know what Justin Harrington could have been in this defense simply because we only got a small sample size and we all thought that he could have been spectacular. To me, Kendall Daniels is probably as close as you could get to that, whatever that was going to be, right? So, no, I'm excited about those guys, and that's definitely I'm optimistic for sure. Jason?
No, I agree. I think that this is the best defensive line in the country, or potentially the best defensive line in the country. When you add in the guys on the edges, if PJ Adebawore is healthy and back to what we are doing, what we expect him to kind of do in year 3, I don't even know. It feels like to me Marvin Jones could be a more or less a gravy guy when it comes to that. We haven't talked about Danny Okoye. We're hearing things about Nigel Smith coming out of there as well, where he's kind of sliding in and out, versatile player. Taylor Wine, you've heard some things about him as well on the edge as far as getting to the quarterback. But, talking to Mike Boganowski the last couple of weeks, he was one of the things he was saying was like, we talked about you're not going to be able to double team R. Mason Thomas. He was like, well, yeah, but you can't double team anybody because if you do, then you're going to leave those guys on the inside open. If we're hearing all this stuff about Stoney as well, that they're going to be getting after the quarterback, which in turn is going to help your secondary out a little bit as far as these guys are going to have to get the ball out quick. And the truth of it is when you look at this schedule and who they're going up against, a lot of new quarterbacks, first-time guys in the system or whatever. Not all of them, but you've got a few that this is going to be their first time as a starter, and this is a defense that is going to be able to dial it up. I think just with your normal pass rush, you're going to be able to put pressure on quarterbacks and make them make decisions a lot earlier, which is going to help the back end, I think, as well. But, yeah, listen, I think that Gentry Williams, I think that's the biggest question I have, I guess, coming into the year is whether or not he is going to be what we've all seen him be when he's healthy and on the field. Love it if he was able to stay healthy. I don't know that you can depend on it, but it's definitely a question that you're hoping that happens because if so, they're ready to go. I do think that there's some guys, that could definitely step in there. We're hearing lots of good things about a lot of these freshman guys that are coming in, and then you got the redshirt freshman in Newcomb as well. Some of these guys that are playing corner too,
and Devin Jordan, right? I mean,
Devin Jordan too. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, when is a Tulsa Union cornerback not balled out for OU?
That is very true.
I mean, Dominique Franks, Trey Brown. I mean, and they weren't even being coached by in this OU scheme. So this current OU scheme with this current OU staff. Obviously, I think Dominique Franks was back in the day, but but I just think everyone keeps mentioning, and I'm going to reference Teddy Lehman, but we've seen it in the photos. I think we've all kind of written off Taylor Heim, and it sounds like we need to dial back that overreaction a little bit. That he apparently looks great, and
he's
Teddy
a stud
says
athlete, man, stud athlete, no doubt about it.
And then Teddy says he's 225, and at Cheetah he's a world of problems for folks.
And that's the interesting part, is because I think Goodwin is going to be great for that, because he's somebody who BV doesn't have to go over there and expend any certain amount of time over there. Goodwin can coach that position with the outside linebackers, so he's going to be able to pick up quick on, okay, this is how versatile we can get from Dolby to Powers to maybe Taylor Heim. Last year, you got to think about it, they put Ford at Cheetah last year, and I think his combine kind of proved it that he could actually play that, right? But hey, just switch it up just for a second, man. We got to talk about the offense. I think the biggest thing for me, listening to Iker and Lane and listening to other people talk about spring practice as well, I think if you really in the weeds and really reading the tea leaves and all the stuff like that does actually come through. I think the biggest narrative that I've heard about the offense is that, hey, from day one, Mateer has been on everybody's ass, basically. And hey, we know
Arbuckle.
Yeah, let's start fast. Let's not sit here and waste time trying to install, slow down, install. No, let's learn it now. This is before practices start. That's a huge thing, especially with a new offense, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, all the rest of that stuff, kind of inserting himself in there, and then hearing it just reiterated throughout all the OU pods and all the rest of that stuff. It just really it reinforces the fact that, hey, that these first couple of days of practice and stuff, they're not having to do base install, crazy stuff like that. They're getting after it. Like they're getting used to his offense. They're learning the plays, learning all the rest of that stuff, and you're not having to sit there and turn a scrimmage into kind of a glorified practice, meaning that you're stopping every 5 seconds to try to have a teaching moment. So it's one of those things where that gives you a lot of optimism, man, because I think for me, especially, and I've been thinking about this a lot with the offense, I just want to see us get up and down the field, man. Last year was one of those, it was just, never knew. You never knew what was going to happen. And then, even the 10-2 season we had the year prior, there was still some
top 5 in both the major categories for offense that year too. But it's just been, we haven't seen what you're used to seeing there, right?
You just let's get up and down the field and do stuff like that, and then also just be able to control the game, man. Be able to dictate our style of ball. I think that's what we're wanting to get to. But I think some of the injury stuff, a lot of stuff, it's bare bones for news right now, people. So I think a lot of stuff is going to be inflated, sensationalized, especially because of last year. But I'm not necessarily worried about a lot of players being out right now or whatever the case may be, simply because it's spring.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's a lot of stuff that's like left over from the season.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. I mean,
well, and some of our depth spots, I mean, am I broken? Would I wish Howland and Nozetta are out there? Yes. but I'm not broken up over Fasusi, Foje, Akinkimi, and EPL getting more reps. I'm not broken up on their development curve. I mean, it's a dog eat dog kind of situation out there, right? So, Howland's leaving himself exposed to the number one offensive tackle prospect in the country, who looks fantastic. I'm sure Howland's like, get me the hell out there as soon as possible, because with every snap for Susie, every gap. So I'm not that worried about the injuries. Eli Bowen being out on crutches is annoying, but we've seen what Eli can
And a
do. If
turned
that
ankle,
gets,
though, isn't it? Isn't that just
yeah,
like
it's a turned ankle. It's a turned ankle, but if that's getting Cortland Guillory and Malik Hawkins more reps and Devon Jordan more reps, then from a development standpoint, to be sunshine pumper, but some of the injuries we're seeing, it's like, okay, it was unlike last year when there were injuries. We're like, well, who's going to help? Who's going to fill in these gaps?
Yeah.
It's like, you see Jaden Jackson's gone. Well, Marcus Strong is getting more work this spring. He's looking better in his third year. We know Todd Bates' defensive tackles improve year over year over year. It's an iterative kind of process.
No doubt.
I think, but Chris with the K, I think we have to sadly give some flowers to Mr. Watkins and give him a bask, his victory triumph. Get him on his chariot to let him go around Circus Maximus. Because Giovanni Gibson, everyone's saying Giovanni Gibson looks like a complete dog. And I can't really get away saying that, but I tried. So give me effort for that.
Before I go taking any credit for that, it happened on my show, but I didn't find him. That was Marcus Dent found him. He saw him play in person and brought him up on the show that day. And
well, I never heard of the guy before you mentioned him, so I'm giving you the props.
Well, cool deal. It was on the show and everything else. But again, we were talking about it that day on the show, and he turns out to, you go and look at the film, and you can say what you want in there, Bevel's bodyguard. 6'3", 4.4 speed, running routes like that, like he runs. It doesn't matter where the hell he was playing at. The dude is able to, that translates to whatever level you want to talk about. When you're running a 4.4 at that size and as big as he is, and you go up and get balls like he does, you can say all these kind of things, but the Heisman Trophy winner from this year played at FCS also. You know what I mean? I realized he was a high level recruit as well, but this guy was a high level recruit too. He was playing quarterback though, instead of receiver. This is a guy that's 2 years in and already has had a plus one. He's had a 1,200 yards and almost 1,300 yard season. I think that more than anything, it's good to see that happening and stuff like that. And it kind of points to me. What I love about it is it points to the fact that these guys know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
That it's not all about how many stars you got on the sheet and how many camps you go to and all that stuff. They know what they're doing with identification. And we know that the first year that EJ was here, you saw serious development within the wide receiver room. You had so many injuries going last year and such a weird thing going on throughout the offensive staff that I think a lot of people are giving him a lot of shit over it too. It's easy to point your finger in all the kinds of directions when things like that, when you have a season like you have this year. But you know what? He's bigger than Travis Hunter. He's faster than Travis Hunter probably too. As far as, is he going to be that kind of guy? I don't know. He's playing in the SEC.
No, I mean, back up your point, bro. Look, it's just a lot of people are just looking at this as on the surface level.
He's an FCS player.
Every single year, there's a D2, D3 player that goes out there and turns a lot of heads. Not only gets drafted either from that university that he's at, or he's at a different school that he's transferred to, and he's balling out. Right? He's in a rotation as far as receiver or whatever the case may be. Like he's out there. See that a lot. It's in Stillwater. See that a lot of different places. So I mean,
well, old Miss's guy, right? He was from Louisiana, and he's obviously he's probably gonna be a first round pick.
Yeah, It's just the fact that guys slip through the cracks. It is what it is, but it's all about development at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
so I think that we have some really good developers. So we'll go from there. But
There's been SCS players the last 5 or 6 years that have all ended up in the draft, high level draft picks and stuff like that. It's sometimes you just don't get looked at, and we know that a lot of these kids can't afford to go to all these camps, which is what you really end up getting.
yeah,
Is what gets you your 5-star guys. That's the easy ones to pick. The top 32 guys that are all at every camp and all that other stuff. You can see it in their measurables. Some of those guys you may not ever see them because they can't afford. They don't leave their area. You know what I mean? And maybe they can't afford to leave their area.
If we want to pick on Bevo's bodyguard, I would just say, look,
He's a
I think you got a whole offensive line to worry about other than
secondary. Yeah, what are y'all going to brand new quarterback with a new offensive line? There you go.
There you go.
You're going to be great, though. Yeah.
Switching it up, people, we're going to move on to the next topic, which is with all this spring optimism and everything that we're going to hear and continue to hear about spring for the Sooners. One thing I would definitely remind you guys, or at least I'm going to just say it out here right now. I think the summer is more important than the spring. And I say that because with the injuries, especially in mind, but also just kind of getting back and just reinforcing this vibe and all the rest of the stuff. May is going to be great just for players to get away, recalibrate, recoup, get everything situated they need to mentally, spiritually, physically, all the rest of that stuff. June 3rd or whenever school class starts again, June and July are going to be huge months simply because you want to read those reports and you want to hear about those reports of who all is participating. I think it's going to be very crucial for a lot of OU fans to hear that Howland, Jaden Jackson, Gentry Williams, all these guys are back. You're not necessarily going to be doing a lot of heavy practicing, but you will be doing a lot of individuals, group stuff, heavy install, all the rest of those different things, gearing up for fall camp, which is going to be amazing. For me, I that's what I want. I want to know who all is there so we can circle the wagon, so we can have more of a realistic perspective about this season. Me, myself, 9+ wins. That's what I'm going for this year. That's what I'm going to say that this team is going to do. I believe that we have the offense and I believe that we have the defense. I think on defense, we have the potential. The ceiling is to be better than what you were last year, just because I think you have a lot of talent on defense, but it's still going to be hard replacing Bowman and Stutz. But at the same time, for me, I think this summer is very, very important. This may be the most important summer that we've had in a while. Hell, honestly, winter workouts, spring ball, summer camp, and fall camp. This is probably the most important off season as a whole, not only for just OU in general, but for BV as well, guys.
It's obviously important for Venables. I think it's important for the entire program. You still got the toughest schedule in the country. There's no two ways around it. You're gonna play the toughest schedule of anybody else, particularly when you start comparing them up with who Texas is going up against. They get that one big game at the start of the year. We don't really know what Ohio State is this year coming in, just like we don't know what Texas is. So we'll see. But I love it that they're all pumping their chest down there about how great they are and stuff like that before they, with all the new things that are coming up with them. In the end, I think that the defense being what it is, if that defensive line can be what it is and what we think it is, I think that if you're anywhere close to what you were on the defensive side and just have a competent offense, there's no way that you repeat what happened last year. Again, I think that the fact is you're going up against a lot of good programs, the best in the SEC all season, but we don't know something about a lot of those teams. A lot of them have brand new quarterbacks, like we talked about. I think that that's a big deal. You start looking at, I believe that Nico, maybe he's a better player than he was this past year at Tennessee. I don't know what that equates to when it comes to Tennessee, because I don't know that they really added the pieces that they needed to add as far as weapons for Nico to throw to. Their best running back gone. In fact, I think their best 2 running backs are gone. That receiver room is basically decimated. They got a bunch of young guys that are going to have to come in and prove themselves. We're going to have to see. I think Nico can be better, and they could have a worse year. We're hearing a lot of stuff about South Carolina. I really like, now they've got a returning quarterback that everybody loves. I like Lenore Sellers, but they've got some issues in the trenches on both sides of the football. They lost their top 4 interior defensive guys, apparently. They've got the one guy, is it Kyle Kennard that's coming back, I think?
No, it's Stewart.
Dylan Stewart, yeah. Anyway, but there's going to be some questions there in the trenches on the offensive line and defensive line. So that's the question that I would have with them. And plus, you haven't seen Beamer really do it all the way around. I mean, you haven't won the huge games yet. I mean, his big win last year was, I don't even know, was it A&M? You know what I mean? They were close in some games, whatever. It was A&M or OU, I guess. I don't know.
It was A&M, I think.
Yeah, I knew they beat A&M, but in the end, they lost to Ole Miss. They lost to Alabama. They lost to LSU. You can say it was the refs if you want to, fine. They still lost the games, and we haven't seen him put it together 2 years in a row. I think that I'm not sure what's going to happen with their receivers. You haven't seen Nick Harbor really come through for him yet. And I think that you're going to have to be able to throw the football better than what they did last year and in order to take that next step. Like I said, Ole Miss, you just think that this new guy's going to come in and be Jackson Dart? I don't know. Maybe he will, but I think it's going to be and they lost a lot on the defensive side. We know Texas has lost a lot. I think that Alabama's scary. I think LSU's scary. But I think that, when you start talking about Mizzou, they got a backup quarterback from Penn State that they didn't do much offensively most of the year, So I don't know what to expect from them. They lost both of their good receivers too. So I feel like this could turn into a really good season, but I also think that, 8-9 wins, that's a big improvement no matter what. And I don't see that you can't do that if you just have a competent offense. And I think that they're going to be more than competent.
Chris Mason.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this summer is all about Mateer. I think you're right, but it's all about Mateer continuing to establish that leadership over the roster, right? That he's the guy organizing things in June and July when you don't want to get up early and do that stuff that we've now got, a senior leader, quarterback type guy who the team respects as a leader. And, I'm not sure what the team thought of Arnold last summer. I'm not sure I'm not going to put the injuries and coordinator mess on Arnold's. That's not Arnold's fault, but he certainly, I certainly feel more confident going into this offseason, into a June, July timeframe with John Mateer and Arbuckle than I do Seth Luttrell and Jackson Arnold. Coming out of the spring game last year, I mean. I think, you feel much better about that. So, yeah, I mean, it's to me, spring is all about, it's almost like the development you need to be doing a year ahead of time, right? That, Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis are going to get better this spring, right? But you really need James Nesta, Taylor Heim, and maybe the Heineke kid, if they still like him. I know he's a walk-on, I'm not sure where he is, but you need your young linebackers being ready. This is the spring that springboards them to start. This is where they need to start accelerating up that hill, right? So that's where spring is for me, right? But I mean, summer is where we're going to make our money, right? This is where Kobe and Kip Lewis and Samuel Masigo are going to fine tune being the guys that are going to lead the defensive linebacker group, where John Mateer is going to lead the offense. He's going to have the running backs. He's out there, and the wide receivers out there. And, Mike Hawkins is going to throw, and I think he's going to flourish under a real quarterback development system with a real quarterback coach. I think Mike Hawkins has the ability to flourish. But you've got Mateer there, and, OU, according to what we saw just published today, is spending, potentially $3 million over 2 years. It's time to get our money's worth out of John Mateer, and everything we hear so far says we paid wisely. We did not pay. We did not choose poorly. We leveraged everything and got the guy in to run our offense. So to me, that's where summer is more important than spring. Spring's a little bit more of, Marcus Strong starts showing signs of being someone who can help. Nigel Smith, right? They're not going to play massive reps this fall, but the following year, as long as they need to be up that, they need to be accelerating their improvement curve, right? You need to be seeing more and more and more from them. Same thing with Danny Okoye to a certain degree. I mean, if R. Mason Thomas and Marvin Jones Jr. are both putting up double-digit sacks, maybe we're not seeing as much from Danny Okoye this year, but we need to know that he's on the path to the next year when those two guys are gone to being the guy that takes over next. But so that's the difference.
He's going to be in that rotation, though, right? I feel like Danny
he will be
in a rotation to where they're going to put him in a position to be successful.
Yeah, I'm just saying, Jason, if we're protecting leads and R. Mason Thomas and Marvin Jones Jr. eating quarterbacks alive off the edge because teams have to force the ball, have to throw against us to make up deficits or tight games in the fourth quarter, as opposed to being up by 2 touchdowns and know that and their offensive coordinator knows he can call a running play every play because our offense can't do anything. It's a different fourth quarter that our defense will be in, I'm just saying that I think you're right about the summer. It's where the rubber will hit the road with all the injuries and all the guys. Like, if Logan Howland's not ready in July, it might be Michael Fasusi, freshman All-American, offensive tackle time. So I think that's the point. That I think you're certainly right there. But I think overall, spring to me is about: are the players that we are somewhat worried about, are they making the progress we want them to make? Like the unknown guys. Like if Devin Jordan has a great spring, that's huge, right? For the program. If Bogo, Powers, and Hayden and Hardy are all playing really well at safety, that's big for the program too. Even though we hope Robert Spears-Jennings and Peyton Bowen are going to be our safeties out there, our primary 2 guys, if they are both healthy and clicking, we know that's a high potential group. So to me, I think you're right. That's where summer is more important. We know, spring's all about your development processes, and are your development processes working? Are your young players starting to make the progress to be impact players?
Mm-hmm.
But summer's where you start, who are going to be the impact players this fall? Who's going to make that 3rd and 6 catch? Who's Matoya going to go to when it's 3rd and 6? Who's going to make that tackle? Who's going to make that cover, that key coverage? That's where summer, it's you're grinding further down to what you really need the team to be.
Yeah. I just feel like the summer, especially this year, is going to be really important because, for me, when I played, my uncle would always talk about, at some point you got to circle the wagon, right? You got to circle that wagon and figure out who here is somebody that I can really count on, right? So I just want it to be consistent. I want the guys to be consistent. If you name them during the summer, hopefully they're doing something during the fall, right? So to me, that's the most important thing. It's just getting to that point of kind of knowing who's out and who's in. What can we expect, right? Hey, one last little tidbit on this. Has anybody heard anything about the Stanford kid, the Stanford transfer?
Backlenko?
Yeah.
I mean, I
haven't heard anything bad.
Not heard anything bad. I mean, the only thing, the most encouraging offensive line comment I've heard is that they've trotted out 3 groups of offensive linemen that looked competent out there.
Mm-hmm.
Bill's obviously, doing what Bill does. I mean, I loved hearing. There's an interview on, I think on the OU Rivals site. Park Bethune has an interview with a kid where the offensive line prospect is talking about, he just loves seeing Bill out there. He's like, Bill's not babysitting the guys. He's coaching and developing them. He's he's working them and he's working them hard, and that's what I want to see, because that's how you get to be, a good offensive line.
I asked
So-
that. I asked that just because it was like I didn't know if Stanford had some like weird academic rules or something like that to where he had to finish the semester.
No, he's again, Chris. What I've heard is that they've been able, even without Ozeta and Howland, they've been able to trot out
Mm-hmm.
3 groups of 5 that are right. They've got, they're not. There's no real walk-ons in those groups. They've got players who are developing and working. And this is before I heard about Autry Dent's injury, but it's like the first 5 is first 5 that was mentioned in one of the reports was Fasusi, EPL, Nwewu, Everett, and Sexton. Right, like the next one was Simmons and Baklenko. Akin Kimmy, Josh Iasosa, and someone else. And then, the third group was, Hollenbeck at center. It was just, it was Foji, and it was Autry Dent. I think maybe Autry Dent was in the other one. It's just saying that the 3 groups you're talking about, okay, these are old scholarship guys who are either freshmen who have played football elsewhere and have some experience that, it was encouraging that, it's not 8 bodies, it's like 15 bodies they're talking about.
Yeah. And that's where you have to really, that's where you have to be the best is in the trenches, like we talked about. I think it's as important as having the right quarterback. And you know what I mean? You just have to do it. So I think that's the biggest question coming into this year. I think for everybody is the offensive line. I was talking to Boganowski this morning on the show, and that's the first thing he said. That's the question I have is what are they going to look like on the O-line? You have Bill Bedenbaugh. You know what I mean? You've recruited very well. I think that, I caught up to you last year. I think the years prior to caught up to you last year because you had those years of 2000, 2001, where they got 5 total linemen altogether. You know what I mean? And so
then
you have a couple
lost
guys go to the draft, and then you have injuries like you had, it kind of throws everything in the air.
Yeah.
Go ahead, what were you saying, Chris?
Yeah, I was just saying that, I keep talking about how if you want to have 2 offensive tackles ready in a recruiting class, you've got to sign 4 in 2 years, not 2 guys in 2 years. And that's the problem. I mean, the only upperclassmen tackles we had was Sexton and Taylor, and they were both banged up, or in Taylor's case, he barely could play all season. And in Sexton's case, we were moving him around to try and plug every gaping hole we had on the offensive line.
He was your most versatile guy that could play either the guard or the tackle position. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
sounds like
it's the season. Yeah, he's back. He sounds like he's playing really well.
Mm-hmm.
Fabechi's Sugai English. Fabechi's dropped 20 pounds. He apparently looks better. I don't know too much more than folks saying he looks better. He looks like he's playing at a better weight. So
he was grading it near the top of the line at the end of the year, right?
The only issue that I have, and I can, is almost damn near like I can hear my uncle's calling me now about him. Every single time you're like, hey man, he's not getting any push. His first step, and we heard about, hey, he's a big kid, power, right? Power. He wasn't a mauler like I thought he was going to be. I thought that's what that kid would eventually turn into. That's why we love EPL, because EPL had a quick first step, which obviously he can run track and all the rest of the stuff. But he had a quick first step, and his hands, violent hands, attacking you before you attack him. And so I think that's what we loved about EPLs, because we got that push at that guard spot that we weren't getting from Nwewu necessarily. It was almost like Nwewu was just holding this guy, and that was it. But for me, that kid has to get stronger at the point of attack. I mean, I think that's where I'm just looking at him like, hey, you could lose the weight, do whatever you want to do. you gotta be better at the point of attack by attacking them, pushing them back, get that push. Because it seemed like that was the side that we wanted to run to a whole bunch. And for me, unless
You realize he was grading out a lot better at the end of the year, right?
I
He had
get
a pretty good game against Alabama too.
Yeah, go to the Navy game and watch him. He was getting no push. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Nobody was getting any push during that game, really, on the offensive line. But I'm just saying, like, that the Bama game is just an anomaly. It's just like an outlier because that was like almost a perfect game for everybody. Even
Well, it was the way that you played them defensively and the way that you had a competent guy apparently that had the game plan that week, Kevin John. So
yeah,
I think that the expectation is that he's probably not your starter, but I think he's going to be in your rotation, and I think that that's the deal with this offensive line is you're going to have two deep everywhere at least, to where you're going to run them in and out. It feels like they're getting to that point that they're looking a lot better.
The reason why I bring that up is because unless Arbuckle and BV and everybody has talked to DeMarco and said, hey, we got to figure out this whatever this rotation is that you want. You got to realize that. For me, I know Tatum fumbles. Tatum is explosive. Tatum will find that hole, and he's explosive out of that hole. X-Rob is your all-around guy. That's who everybody loves right now. But if DeMarco falls in love with Javonte Barnes and Sawchuck, here's what you have to understand. As good as Sawchuck could be, Sawchuck is trying so hard to be Kennedy Brooks, and it's like, dude, just be yourself. You have world-class speed. Run the ball. He likes to be patient and try to get behind those blocks. If Away was just holding this guy up and not attacking that guy and not being powerful and pushing that guy back, it's pointless. You get more of the same from Sawchuck, which is a 2-yard run here, 2-yard run here, 15-yard run the next play, third time he gets a handoff, and then the next play, another 2-yard gain. And then obviously with Javonte Barnes, throw out the
injury stuff is concerning for Javonte, man.
Yeah, his vision still is not necessarily where it should be. And so that's why I say offensive line obviously has to be better, but you got to be better at the point of attack to give those two guys a chance, an opportunity to actually be really good.
I would also tell you that I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that their base run package was not very good, and they were running a lot of stuff to the meat of the defenses that they played against, which was right in the middle. They didn't have any stretch zone that they were working towards. Yeah, I saw that. Fair enough, Funk. Fair enough. Fair enough. But again, I think that so many things that the scheme is going to help a ton. Having a good quarterback that isn't scared and pissing down his leg with nobody on him is going to be helpful. Having a guy that's scheming something very well is going to be helpful. Just even for the offensive line, for that matter. I don't think that we've, something that Chris Mason brought up on the show last week that he did with me was the help that I think Kevin Wilson is going to bring, and just being, even if you are just an analyst, this guy's you're going to be able to bounce a lot of stuff off of him. He's been an offensive line coach. He's been a good tight end coach. I think you're going to get some things about that. One of the things we really haven't talked about offensively speaking is Jaron Kanak, man. We're hearing a lot of really good things about him. We're hearing a lot of good things about Caden Helms. We've seen that, our freshman from last year that really just didn't get much going. Mr. Mason, you all right there, buddy?
Yeah.
We didn't see a whole lot coming out of, our freshman, high 4-star guy, 5-star guy, if you waited another year. But it feels like this tight end room may be moving in the right direction. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I was passing.
That was the other thing, Optimism. It's quietly leaking a little bit is that the tight end group is looking pretty good. I don't know what Kanak can provide, what kind of boost you can get from him, but there's lots of people pushing him, and a lot of people are cheering for him. So I've liked how Caden Helms has looked in some of the drill stuff we've seen. That looks positive.
Yeah.
So I think, the last summer coming out of me, I think the summer will tell us where our tight end group really is. So if things will weed out a little bit there, we'll have a better idea if this Canic thing is just the latest sort of spring flavor of spring. And if he can put on a little weight and continue playing better there, then maybe that's something that really will sort of pan out for OU, or one of the other tight ends will, have a good spring and follow it up. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it could be. We could end up with
I
something
think
that
whatever
ends
you
up
get from
helping
him
the
is
offense.
probably gravy if you're being
Yeah.
honest about it. But I do think that we have heard some positive things out of there. And with Devon Mitchell, if he's we're talking about 275. I mean, he doesn't look like he's 275, but they're saying it, and he's moving the way he's moving. That's a tough guy to get down on the ground at 275, man.
I think the
block
biggest,
somebody.
That's what I'm saying. I think the biggest thing is just making sure these guys can block. I think the expectation would be for Mitchell to kind of be your. I mean, if you could turn him into anything, Jermaine Gresham, like tight end, where he's stretching the field, doing things like that. Which, from what we heard, he has all the potential. But I think that right now, it would be nice to have a great blocker, consistent possession tight end, right? Somebody that's reliable on third down, even second down, that is a sure spot, a sure guy that's going to get you 3 to 4 yards each play and fall forward. I think that's all that you really can ask for, and be good in pass protection as well. So, I mean, anything is better than what we've had these past 2 years. And I don't think that's any fault to Stogner. I mean, Levy just didn't use tight ends, right? And the H-back was, it is what it is. I think that what's interesting about Canic is that I think that he could be in some situations where he could be a pass catcher, but I would not be surprised if Arbuckle had a package or two for him during the season where he was able to kind of run
the ball
downhill, maybe off a tackle,
H-back.
something like that. Yeah. So that's the interesting part,
Yeah, man. You think about what you saw from him when he was in high school. And again, it's high school, I get it. But it's a lot of damn touchdowns he ran for. And I mean, the guy just ran and ran and ran and ran. And, we know he's got speed, but he's put on, I mean, what is he, around 230 now? I think that he's going to be good. I think he'll be a good blocker too. I don't know that he's going to be the biggest target out there as a tight end either, but I could see him being used the way that you saw Paul and, Dimitri Flowers being used, that they were kind of low dudes that were, not huge guys, but they were good athletes. So, I mean, if you can get him in situations like that, I mean, anything you get out of him is gravy no matter what, you know what I mean? But I do think that I'd like to see what you were talking about, him running the ball a little bit as well. Yeah, in the backfield, though, I guess my biggest concern would be what are they going to do as far as that rotation is concerned with. I don't know that you have to give a lot of love to Sawchuk and or Javonte Barnes at this point. I just don't know that you do. You've got young guys that are, if Tatum isn't fumbling the football anymore this year, which I hope that's the case, he's an explosive thing waiting to happen. Torrey Blaylock, same thing. That guy's a home run waiting to happen. X-Rob through the tackles outside, doesn't matter. He was very good at the end of the year. I think it could be really good in that instance. Again, you want to see what they come up with, but I think that the biggest thing with some of these tight ends is maybe you're going to see some more 12 personnel, some stuff like that might be able to help you in that regard in the running game.
Well, obviously, with Mateer's ability to run the ball, sort of the unaccounted for man with some extra blockers, we've seen that work. We've seen that work before, especially in the red zone. So I think we'll see some different stuff from Buckle in terms of short yardage and red zone stuff a little bit.
We're hearing they're under center a little bit.
Yeah, we even heard they were under center. So, I think I think, again, spring optimism. We were hearing good things about a lot of guys, and that's the way the case
Sure.
that's the way it should be. We've recruited good young players in the last 2 classes. We got a whole bunch of them enroll early. Manny Choice looks like $1 million. Elijah Thomas, everyone's raving about. The freshman DBs are all getting buzz. The freshman O-line are getting buzz. So it's all encouraging right now in terms of our trend line where we're pushing in terms of talent base on the roster. Flip some stuff over. The D line and linebackers all look like first off the bus kind of guys. And that's what Nagy was talking about. Like, there's certain traits you're looking for, and you can start checking those boxes on the defensive line, on the linebacker group and the safety group. And I think, if we had an offensive line group where, if Jacob Sexton could get back to the guy who was adequately and perhaps playing better than Guyton when he replaced him at the end of 23, if we can get that guy back, and then I would be fine if they decided to go with Michael Fasusi at left tackle, right? If you figure by Texas time he's ready to roll, and he's the guy you need to block these SEC defensive ends. I don't have a huge problem with that. I think we'll see who summer, is more about, kind of it's not crunching time. Let's get ready to go. Spring, everybody's got a chance in spring.
Everybody's got a chance in spring. I think one of our next topics for another show, I'll let Jason get us to like one of our last topics, but I'm interested in that corner room simply because, and we're praying, sweet Lord, sweet baby Jesus, please let
Lord, baby Jesus.
Please,
we doing Ricky Bobby here. We doing Ricky Bobby.
Yeah. So if we could get Gentry, Eli Bowen, and Dolby on the field together, my God. And then if Jacoby Johnson can take a step, and then you could find who is going to be that fourth guy right there. But what I'm really interested in, and I'm getting to the point now with the topic, is who is going to be that CJ Colden, Eli Bowen guy that didn't necessarily have on your radar, but you're like, hey, he could snag some starter minutes, potentially start midway through the year once things are going and he's like fully locked in, right? That to me, that's going to be an interesting part because there's a bunch of names there. Cortland Guillory, Newcomb, Tristan Haynes, right?
Yep. Devon Jordan.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are names out there. So, I mean, you're looking at those guys, like who's going to be that fourth guy in that rotation for the corners.
Yeah,
but
don't
also
forget Malik Hawkins too, man. They said
Malik Hawkins. So you're saying who's going to be in that rotation as far as a solid rotation, but who is somebody that is maybe on the outside looking in, but could potentially find himself, smack dab in the middle of that rotation. So we'll talk about that later. Jason, go ahead with yours, because I know a lot of people are wanting.
That's kind of what they're asking about. Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest thing that it kind of struck me whenever I was taking a look around some of the different sites was that you're hearing a lot of things about Bo Bentley talking about the weekend that he had. Apparently, you did not have Jaden O'Neal even anywhere around Future Freaks this week. He moved to Oklahoma this past week, and he's not at the Future Freaks thing. You would have expected him to be there every day. He's not there. And now we're hearing that he's in Georgia, taking a visit over there to go see Georgia. So I guess the question is it appears that they, according to Bo Bentley, they have made him a priority, quote, I guess my question I would start with asking Chris Mason. You've talked to O'Neal. I don't know if you've talked to him since all this got started. What is going on in that situation? Does it look like to you that Oklahoma is going to end up with Bo Bentley and probably not O'Neal?
So to me, it seems like we're stuck in a bad country song with the two quarterbacks, right? that Arbuckle's in love with, he's got, what do you do when you love two women and you don't know how to break up with one of them? So I think I don't know that I'm not a country music fan, but it sounds like we're like in a country music thing, like um, you know, um, I I don't know. I know this. It's funny. I see other sites and guys who follow recruiting. That's what their business is, saying that this issue will resolve itself in the summer. And to me, it just seems ridiculous, and you're opening yourself up to losing both kids if you drag it out this long, pissing both of them off. So, obviously Jaden O'Neal's at Georgia. He's getting his backup plan in motion. And if you're Georgia, you'd be happy to take him because you're not getting. Doesn't sound like Jared Curtis is coming your way. So, Bo Bentley was on campus, and everybody, and they did a good job making Bo feel like the OU wanted him. The OU coaches, if you notice, were all over O'Neal's announcement when he moved to Mustang. Todd Bates is retweeting it. Miguel Chavis is retweeting it. All the coaches are talking about it. So I'm confused. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It does. I mean, I don't think from a recruiting effort, NIL dollars standpoint, that you could sign 2 top 100 quarterbacks. And even if you do, you're just wasting that money for 1 year because after that year, the next guy's gone.
One of them,
The other guy,
either way.
one of them's leaving. So
I think
it's
either one of
it's
them is probably going to have
pointless.
to sit either way, right? They're going to have to sit anyway.
I think, yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah,
Mason.
I just don't understand. I'm hoping Jim Nagy steps in and forces Buckle to say, who do you want? Here's who I want.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you want? And we need to make a decision on this. It's like you don't go into the draft. You don't go in. NFL roster cutting time's occurring, right? Teams are getting down to who their starting quarterback, who they want their starting quarterback to be. And I think that's what OU needs to do in the next couple of weeks. Is that O'Neal be back on should be back on campus for some spring practice stuff. That's everything that I've heard. Once he's moved to Mustang. And just I'm gonna be sort of, I'm gonna put on an objective hat here. I don't really care which quarterback they choose. I think both are very talented. And at this point, but choose one of them, move forward with that person, and then find a 3-star quarterback that you think is completely underrated and make him the second quarterback in the class and focus your efforts in that direction. Because, Bo Bentley's going to be in LSU this weekend. We know LSU will be touting him completely to come in and be their next quarterback since they lost. They lost Underwood, and I don't think they really picked up anybody, any big names after losing Underwood to Michigan in that recruiting class last year.
Buren is there. That's the only issue.
Yeah, well, but in recruiting you'll ignore that. So he's going to Ohio State. He's going to Georgia. He's going to LSU. The odds that one of these schools is not going to give the number 50 player in the nation, the number 1 quarterback in Texas, according to Rivals, a big NIL deal and a pitch, and basically say, why are you wasting this time with Oklahoma? They have Jaden O'Neal. You need to be our guy. Are they telling it'll be a negative recruiting pitch. Well, you're our number 1 guy. We have no one else above you. What is Oklahoma telling you? What is that? And if they're not telling you this, what are they telling Jaden O'Neal? What's going on?
My only thing is this right here. So just a couple of points. First off, being that I think NIL may be the factor that keeps us from getting both, because you look around the nation. I mean, you look around college football and you say, hey, Georgia is still getting 4 and 5-star quarterbacks that commit to them, even though that's kind of to their demise. Bama is going to have a loaded quarterback room, like especially in Nick Saban era. Ohio State with all the guys they have. Hell, Eric Nolan, who I think a lot of people thought would eventually take over, he transferred to where South Carolina. Now you have Julian Sayin, the St. Clair kid, all the rest of it. So I mean, you're spending a lot of money, and I get that, but I this is what I truly believe will happen. I think Nagy is going to if you just want me to just give the biggest guesstimation ever, right? Biggest guess, I would say I think Nagy probably looks at both kids. I think he probably looking at the film, all the rest of the stuff that's already out there on them, I think he is going to be a deciding factor in that as far as just saying, like, hey, look, this is the kid that I would go with, right? You know, the whole mold of, you know, I heard him on a franchise today talking about, you know, hey, you know, there may be some kids that come here and have a different career path and all the rest of this stuff, and we're going to help them as well, just as much as we help the other kid. But if you're coming to OU to play football, you know, you probably should have dreams to play in the NFL, right? So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for those guys who are NFL guys. So I think that that's going to be a loud voice in the room. I think they're going to figure out because, you know, and I gotta give credit to my uncle on this. You know, we were talking the other day, and he was like, "Hey, man, Jaden Gibson. The one thing that Jaden Gibson has over this Bo Bentley kid. Not saying that people don't want it, won't do the same for him." He's been a big recruiter in this class for you and has some kids committed to you that are directly tied to him, right? So it's just one of those things where you kind of got to lock it down unless you think that you are going to have the funds, you think that you are going to have the money to chauffeur both of them to Norman. So that is kind of the thing. I think that in my heart of hearts, I think I'm riding with Jaden O'Neal. That's kind of what I want. What you call it, like I said, Bo Bentley, as great as his film could be, all the rest of the stuff, those off platform, it's one of those things that can still be a project that never gets put together. And I know what Arbuckle does, still gonna have to see it, all the rest of that. However, a lot of Tannehill vibes right now. I just don't know if that's something that I want to go towards with a project.
That's faint praise. That's faint praise, man.
Yeah, and
that's a living definition of faint praise.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, you know, it's do or die. These next 2 years are do or die, in my opinion. I think, again, I believe BV is going to have 2 years. This is year one. Next year is year two. To prove a point, make a mark, show everybody I can have consistent 9+ win seasons, all the rest of that stuff that you guys want.
I don't know that Jet News not their guy, that they're going to be, you know, end up doing really well whenever he feels like a Sam Bradford guy. You know what I mean?
I keep saying the Sam Bradford vibes that are there for him. So that's going to be an interesting part as well. But I mean, you got to get there. But I would say, I think Nagy is eventually going to he's going to sway the influence a lot. I think that you have the luxury of, hey, he's moving out here. We're not going to pressure this kid, all the rest of the stuff. We know that we got him. We're going to try to get this guy. But I think that, I mean,
it's touchy though, right, Chris? I mean, I feel like you kind of, it's a touchy situation because this kid has been committed to you for a year. He's been loyal the whole way. And then, and I get it that, look, I don't have a problem with Arbuckle liking Bo Bentley. Don't have a problem.
But to me, I agree completely. If the moment you made the Bentley offer, you should have told O'Neal, son, look at more options. We consider you decommitted. Right? Okay. We consider you decommitted. We're pursuing Bo Bentley as well. You know, Brent's always saying, you know, you can't be committed to 2 girlfriends, right? Or, whatever bad relationship analogy or country song you want to say. This is the problem I have, is not that they are recruiting Bo Bentley. It's that this isn't wide receiver. You can't, it's not like Emmett Jones is juggling 7 blue chip guys for 4 spots, right? And everyone says, well, what if we have the NIL money for both? I'm like, well, I want that NIL money buying another elite defensive end or linebacker, or maybe this cornerback from Georgia who just visited, who really likes OU, but, Bama and Georgia are heavily involved with him. Maybe I want that money freed up to go head-to-head and get a 5-star cornerback, not 2 top 50 quarterbacks, depending upon who's doing your rankings and ratings and all that, right? So it's more the NIL. I just want Nagy to apply some NFL salary cap common sense to this roster, right? And this is why, to use a bad analogy here, the Falcons signed what's his name, and they also drafted Penix, and everyone blew him up, right? Because now they have to deal with the consequences that Penix is the guy they want to go with, but they got to decouple themselves from the ex Minnesota quarterback whose name's escaping me.
Well, yeah, but that was because they paid him so much to bring him in. What a dumbass move.
Well, exactly. But let's just say you
around.
do the same thing, right? You basically you if you're in an NFL draft position and you have, thank you, Craig, Kirk Cousins. I don't know if I can remember that name.
Kirk Cousins. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm only in Atlanta. I heard that name will fall. Let's just say, let's just call the recruiting and NIL like the draft, right? And you've got so much money dedicated to your you've got a 13th pick in the draft and a 15th pick in the draft. You don't draft back-to-back quarterbacks. Nobody does. Right? Now you might draft a first rounder, like the third pick, and then if your quarterback room's completely bare, you may take a flyer on a kid in the third round.
Yeah,
but you don't waste.
Round,
you don't waste. You're the 12th pick in the draft and the 13th pick in the draft on back-to-back quarterbacks. You just don't. You get quarterback. What's the next biggest need on the roster? And let's just say middle linebacker is. You go either Bentley or O'Neal, and then you go either Sinceri Johnson or Talanoa Ely, who just visited, who's a 5-star linebacker, basically. Because that's the big need on the roster. You need an elite middle linebacker to make this roster hum, this defense hum for Brent. So I think it's only fair to O'Neal's family to say, you have been so straight with us. We're going to be straight with you. Let's call you decommitted. Go find a school you want, and we're going to continue recruiting you and Bo Bentley. But we're the first verbal. The next real verbal takes the spot. And if you say, and we think Bentley's, and we're pushing for Bentley over you, that's the honest comment you should be making to the O'Neal family if that's really the case, because he's moving to Oklahoma to be nearer to the program, to be, to go through to be there for every game and every kind of recruiting presence. I think, if Arbuckle truly likes Bentley better, man up, make that decision, and cut Jaden O'Neal loose so he can go to Georgia or Ohio State and see where his talents lie at somewhere else. I'm trying to suppress the bias towards O'Neal because I've talked to the kid. He's a great kid.
Well,
right? I'm trying to suppress that.
Before, and has a big deal arm too. It's
not like, and again, and maybe they're just torn, right? They are absolutely torn, and they're trying to decide which way they go, and they're trying to, and they have some variable or test in their mind, and maybe, Jason, we went back and forth with this on your show last week. Maybe they're waiting to see Elite 11 and see how the two kids come out of Elite 11, because that's as close as comparison test. Maybe it's a bad comparison test.
I don't love that at all. I don't want to hear that shit.
Well, but
I agree. We did talk about that. We did.
It's not like, ideally you tell Jaden O'Neal, go get a team of 11 guys. Bentley, go get your team of 11 guys, and we'll find a defense to match up, and let's go play some games and see who's the better quarterback. But you're not going to get that until the fall, and O'Neal's going to be playing at Mustang apparently, and then Bentley's at Salina, Texas. So we've got two. I don't know how you compare the matchups of the talent they're playing.
Probably about pretty similar, probably.
Maybe it's more similar than it is California versus Texas. But I don't know. I just don't know right now how if you are. And it looks like Arbuckle is divided, right? Because he's not. If he truly knew one of these guys was going to be his quarterback, he'd have cut the other guy loose.
Well, I still think that chances are you may get Mateer for a second year. You still have Hawkins in the fold, at least for now. I think they're trying to get him his red shirt back. Either one of these guys that ends up, I don't know that you're going to end up having either one of them play a snap at Oklahoma. If they really,
well, and why are you so obsessed with two high school quarterbacks anyway? Just pick up somebody in the portal,
Right.
Cole Gonzalez kind of to provide depth. I understand the depth is. Yeah. Your depth is made, but look at what we did. Look what happened with Hawkins and Zerbrug, right? we signed Zerbrug, and really that was a waste of a scholarship and waste of a signing. Right? He's never playing it down at Oklahoma. Maybe he'll be a great quarterback at Utah. Maybe he won't. I wish him all the success, except when he's playing OU.
Yeah.
But really, he's not on the roster. Right? After a year, he realized, hey, I didn't get off the bench, and OU had a terrible quarterback year. Right? No one was mentioning me coming off the bench and doing a thing. So if I can't play here during their worst quarterback year ever, then I'm not playing here.
Sure.
So I just don't see the logic in bringing in two guys. Again, now if you can find some athlete guy that you think is a quarterback that nobody else thinks, and if that doesn't work out, he can play wide receiver or safety or something like that. Not that those positions aren't stacked with wide receivers and safeties. That's fine. But I think if you're Arbuckle, to me, I'll make another stupid, silly prediction because that's what I do on this show. By 4:15, we're not even bothering with this discussion. One of these guys is gone to another school, and it's down to who's left. And maybe OU.
You're making another prediction on a date.
Yeah, make another silly. Well, but I was right on one. I mean, I have a 50% batting average. That would keep me in the major leagues.
It would.
Now it gets me fired in almost every other prognosticating industry, but I'm just saying, everyone's saying, by the summer it'll work itself out. I'm like, there's no way this kid is going to Ohio State, LSU, and Georgia, and I'm talking about Bentley, going on a tour of schools and not coming back with an answer to OU of, well, I'm ready to commit to this place. Are you ready to take my commitment? And if they take Bentley's commitment, 2.5 seconds later, O'Neill's out the door.
Yeah, and I think
I would be out the door too. I would not hold that against the kid at all. I'd be like, no way, I'm decommitting.
Yeah, and Kimberly Kay's talking about the coaches spoke with both families and they're allowing them to decide if they're sticking with the process or not. I'm pretty sure that's basically what Coop was saying, was that it's been, they know what's going on. And I mean, as I said, O'Neill wasn't at Future Freaks this weekend. So that it kind of tells you a little something. And there were no plans to take trips.
Was there. He wasn't planning to be there anyway. So, it's not like O'Neill said he's coming. He said he was coming. It was well known he wasn't coming.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't realize that part. I figured you just got to town. I figured you'd be there at some point. You know what I mean? But then again,
no, I get it. But now, if he does not show up at like any spring practices or the Crimson Combine, then yeah, red flags. Then red flags are all over the place. He's obviously he's getting ready to leave. And if
you have to expect this anyway, right?
If he posted tomorrow, I'm decommitting from OU and I'm going to Georgia, I'd be like, okay, you better freaking hope that you're on the phone with Bo Bentley getting a verbal commitment tomorrow.
Yeah,
he's
basically taking trips until the end of the month, so I think this is not going to be until April that you're going to find out anything on Bo.
Well, then that in itself is a dangerous setup. In terms of screwing around with O'Neill. Well, I don't know.
I think it's fairly. There's a risk involved here for sure. I think there's a risk involved here, but I also
juggling hand grenades is a risk. But this is.
Is this worse than
you
that?
have? Well, it's just. My only point is Arbuckle seems to be a good recruiter at quarterback. OU had Peyton Houston on campus. From all reports from various sites, that visit went well, and Peyton seems to be realigned with Oklahoma. And maybe Oklahoma can make a push to get a commitment from him this summer. Peyton's obviously a very good quarterback, high school quarterback prospect, according to the folks that are out there. Rivals has him as a number 15 player in the nation for 2027, and he would probably be kind of a Pied Piper leading players in 2027. So
sure.
It's just, to me, you just have to make a decision. It's like a Bad Country song, cheating on my wife and my lover, and my dog has left me, and my pickup truck is broken,
But to
or
be
something
fair
along
to
those.
Arbuckle, if he wants Bo Bentley, he should be able to go get Bo Bentley.
No, exactly, and but he should tell O'Neal that right now and say, "Look, this was a gun.
What if he
a shotgun wedding.
It's not
This
a
is a shotgun
guarantee that he's
wedding.
going to get Bentley, though. Why would you just give up the other guy if you don't have to?
Okay, let's just call it what it is. Bentley would be verbal to Oklahoma already if O'Neal wasn't currently verbal.
Is that a fact?
I strongly believe, based upon the data.
Okay,
data
fine.
that
Then
folks
nut
I've
up and
talked
do
to,
it. Then make the decision.
that I strongly believe that if he was not already, I mean, look at all the quarterbacks that have verbaled around the country. I mean, this is a high, I mean, Jackson Arnold was verbal to OU by this point, and that was, we're getting close to when Michael Hawkins was. Yeah, I think if O'Neal wasn't verbally committed to OU, Bentley would already be committed. And if they're taking two quarterbacks and everybody's fine with it, why isn't Bentley already committed? So, I think okay, so that's a fact, Jason. So I just think,
I don't even know what that was. I don't even know.
But I think that's the problem. And I guess if I'm showing some annoyance on this topic, it's because OU had a fantastic recruiting weekend, right? Fantastic, right? They had a stupid amounts of talent from 2026, 2027, and even some 2028 guys on campus. But that narrative is getting a lot of play. But it's being counterbalanced by this QB narrative because obviously, that sells clicks. That's a big story. It's a national recruiting story. So to me, it's like you put your best foot forward with 45 top 100 type kids in the country, and coming out of the weekend, you're getting all the buzz from that. And then a day later, Jaden O'Neal is in Georgia, as he has every right to be. And that's now the story, right? That's now what we're talking about. So my frustration is that you're not managing your marketing power in recruiting as well as you should be, because you're letting this story fester and be more publicized, where OU's only going to get a black eye on this story.
Step up then, right? I don't know.
Exactly. That's why I need the negative say, guys, this is NFL teams, don't let this sort of marketing, don't lose their marketing initiative. It's they're signing free agents and they're putting a big spin on it. Well, it's just recruiting free agency. I don't know. Maybe it's the draft, whatever comp you want to use. I'm just saying that all we should have been hearing about for the last 3 days is how well the Future Freaks weekend went. You reestablished with Peyton Houston. You appear to have reestablished with Jonathan Hatton, running back. You've got new wide receivers visiting. Emmett Jones offered 3 top 50 kids. Trey Moore, Eric Moore's son. And is that making me feel damn old? Yes, it is. They just offered Eric Moore's kid.
Yeah.
Who's a top 50 player in the nation. You had both of the key defensive tackles that OU's making a move on. Tavion Branch from Pennsylvania, Brian Davis from Florida were both on campus. They apparently love their visits. OU's trending for both of those. The linebacker kid from Carthage, DeQuavies, has now set up an official visit. You had Talanoa Ely on campus on Monday, your 5-star linebacker. The road kid
talking about the quarterbacks. Go into that stuff, man. Go.
The road kid who decommitted from OU back on campus on Monday, hanging out with Chavis, looking like they're best friends again. You had Gene Riordan from Illinois on campus. You had Toa Katoa, Vincent Johnson. So you had offensive line and D line, the spots that we're always critical about. You had all kinds of big players on campus, and that's what I want to be talking about, not this spinning story about Bentley v. O'Neill, which again is sounding to me like a bad country song gone wrong, where you're cheating on your wife and your girlfriend at the same time or something like that. So, they did a great job with those kids, getting them on campus. They had a lot of 27 kids on campus they liked. DeMarco Murray made 2 offers to guys who look like they're going to be top 100 running backs. And this is some of the names, and there's a lot of other names that, weren't confirmed that probably were on campus as well. So everything is pointing upwards on recruiting, but you're just letting this, in my opinion, this QB story drag you down. Like Peyton Houston was on campus, according to 2 of the services. OU rivals, Malachi Ziegler, a top 50 quarterback for 27, was on campus as well. So OU's working on a backup plan behind Peyton Houston, and Buckle's making good connections with all of them. It's just, did we just decide this QB, who we're taking this QB in 2026, and let us move on to other stories and other publicity?
I feel it. I definitely feel it. It's the off season. We ain't got nothing else to talk about. So this thing is gonna heat up.
Yeah. So exactly, they're gonna keep eating it up, right? For every day this doesn't happen, we're gonna have an article from. There are 5 big. There's 5 big there's 5 big recruiting services basically, and each one of them, the longer this goes on, is going to be like Bentley O'Neill Day Watch, day 103.
Oh, come on.
It's just the fact that if and this is kind of a little bit of the downside. If NIL wasn't necessarily an issue, you take both kids and you go on about your business.
But, you wouldn't worry about it, right? You just one league
roster size reduction and NIL. I think it kind of makes it all that more important. But people, here's the thing that I'll say: you got to just pump the brakes just a little bit and let BV and Nagy really figure this out. Because I think at the end of the day, it's ultimately going to be BV's decision, and I think that Nagy is going to be a heavy influence in that. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But outside of that, go ahead.
But I agree with you, but what other data points are they going to get now that they won't have in June?
That's true.
I mean, neither of these kids. The only significant thing out there is the thing Jason and his team when I was on his show on Friday night do not like, which is Elite 11. That's the only thing happening between now and a June timeframe is the Elite 11. And even Elite 11 is, I think, you'd be going off there qualifying for Elite 11, because Elite 11 goes on, I think, is in June or July. So you won't even have that answer until that late date.
Yeah.
That's not. Where did you get the idea that we don't like Elite 11? That was Bogue said he didn't care about Elite 11. I don't think it's as big a deal because there's nobody going at them. But I don't think that's what you base this decision on either.
No, I completely agree with you. But that's the only new relevant head-to-head data point you're going to have.
No doubt. There's nothing else happening.
If you can't look at the film from last year or their career film, or ask both kids to come in for a private throwing session.
Sure.
And Bentley's in Salina, he can come up and do that. O'Neill's going to be in Mustang, he can do that. If you can get that, but there's no reason why you can't do that during spring ball. Hide it and get them into the Everest Center and have them do a throwing session or something. I think if the NCAA rules allow for that, I don't know if they do or not. But other than that, what else? You've met the kids multiple times.
Yeah.
What else? What other data point is there?
Well, let me ask you this though: is this because of the fact that you got a full season out of Bo, and whatever was going on with that high school team, they didn't play a lot of games in California? No, he did have a 7 touchdown game, in the season. It didn't look like he got worse. But is it a matter of having less show of whatever development he had or whatever? Do you think that has anything to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, that obviously impacts O'Neill's recruiting rankings for sure, because you don't have a full season to judge him. So if that's your concern, but he can't make that up. I mean, not in this spring window when you're deciding this. I mean, Could you ditch him in December and a la Kevin Sperry? But you're not going to pick up Bo Bentley at that point. He's going to be too locked in. You're going to, Jet New I think Jet New looks good on film, but obviously he's not a top 50. He's not the best quarterback in Texas. That wasn't his ranking or status. You couldn't have. Oh, you didn't steal someone else. I mean, they took a guy that Arbuckle had a close relationship, which he basically knew he could flip. Right? He knew he could flip him because of OU's power and brand at quarterback. So could you go that route? Yeah, I guess. But I mean, that's my point. But I think you're probably right. I think that's Arbuckle's problem, is that he doesn't have the high school film on O'Neal from his junior year that he would like, versus the high school film that Bentley has out there, which is like 15 games, something like that, since they went so far in the playoffs or something like that. At least 13, 14 games versus I think it's like 6 for O'Neal. So if that's your quandary, well, it was your quandary in December. It was your quandary when you offered Bentley, when I don't remember the date on that, but I think it was early January, mid-January, and it's still the same quandary now. You've got to find a way to break this and move on and let because Bo Bentley may be the best recruiter in the planet. Right, he may have all kinds of Texas players, high school players, who love him and want to play for him, and he may, have a whole, he may be on social media, he may rally guys and get guys to visit that we haven't even thought about, but he can't do it if he's not committed. So he can't be that ringleader if he's not committed. And if you wait until June, after OU finishes all of their official visits and will have filled their class, which we know that's what Brent's done the last 3 years in a row. It's basically, O'Neal went to go visit Colorado, so yeah, and I know everyone says they want to take. Both families know they want to take 2 quarterbacks, but guys, if your quarterback doesn't have a big enough ego that he wants to be the dude, then he's probably not the guy that you want. And maybe that's a simplistic analysis on this, but I'm not sure I want a stud quarterback who's willing to share the room with someone else.
Me neither.
You invite competition, man. I think.
But Peyton Houston's your competition, right? Michael Hawkins is your competition. Jet New's your competition.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the dynamics of that, are we can decide whether I'm full of crap on that or not. At a later point. But I'm
sure on that belief. But I don't know.
Listen,
I want the guy who wants to be the guy, right?
I'm gonna go watch the rest of this basketball game now.
That's what I'm about to say. Listen,
all right, guys.
We've been on here for an hour and 27 minutes. I told y'all last week, this is ongoing. We're gonna talk about it. We talked about. I kind of feel like we talked about it a little bit first. We talked about it a little bit first. If I can't say this whole quarterback thing, we're gonna give y'all the real. We're gonna continue to talk about it because it
ain't going away yet.
It's not going away.
I'm gonna find a country song that fits this damn situation.
Oh, have fun with that. Yeah.
But guys, look, again, we've been on here for an hour and 27 minutes. Thank you guys for being here. Like on all channels. Visit the Patreon for Chris Mason, Sooners 360 with the website and everything. Jason, every show that he has, hit him up. Tell Coach that, hey, he had a great year. Everything is fine. It probably won't happen again for another day. I'm just playing, Coach, if you're watching this. I love you, bro. But anyways, Horns Down Podcast, Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with Jason and the Coach, and Sooners 360. Check out all 3 channels. Like, subscribe, share all the content with all your people. Y'all know once we get into it, we get into the real, no sugarcoat. We just talk about what it is for what it is. But with that being said, people,